almost as controversial as interference with our bananas, for example, is the issue of migration and whether membership of the European Union has meant too many foreign workers over here. Sarah has been looking at what impact leaving the EU could have on migration.
Leaving the EU would mean that we could choose to control our population flows. Last year, 174,000 people moved to Britain from the rest of Europe. That's far more than left the country. And of course, it's immigrants from Poland and other Eastern European countries that people notice the most. 393,000 people from those countries have moved to Britain since they joined the EU 8 years ago. But that's because we chose to allow free access from Poland and the rest. We didn't have to. And anyway, most people think Eastern European migrants make a positive contribution to the UK economy. And don't forget, there is significant immigration from the rest of the world. Last year, 314,000 people moved to Britain from outside the EU, far, far more than came here from Europe.
Well, Katinka, as well as being an economist, as I said before, you come from Germany, and Germany in some ways has been through this journey with Turkish workers, for example, which a decade or so ago was a very controversial issue. Do you see the tensions that are created by the belief amongst some that we have a lot of Europeans coming in and taking British jobs?
Absolutely. But there's a paradox in the British debate. On the one hand, Britain is proud of its very flexible labour market and it wants to defend that labour market against intrusion from Brussels. At the same time, you want to control the labour market. What foreigners do, they grease the labour market. Bright people come here, they want to achieve something. The reason why the US economy is doing so well is because it's so good at integrating the best and the brightest people from around the world. What you cannot do is say, we're going to close the door for foreigners, perhaps pick and choose a little bit that we shoot in a talented person here or there. This doesn't work. You either keep the door open or you close them. If you close them, your economy will suffer.
P.Y., you're a migrant from France.
And I'm an economic refugee, I am. Yeah, you know, I think I totally agree with Katinka. I think we bring added value, hopefully, and we are taxpayers in your country.
But do you understand the sense in which there are people here, particularly out of the metropolitan centres, who really feel that they are losing jobs to people from France, Germany, and the Eastern European countries?
I think it's a very dangerous debate. You're opening the door to nationalistic concepts. And remember, we are terrorized in France by the extreme right of Le Pen and all this, who won 20% of the electorate. I think you really don't want to go there. I think we're creating added value.
Some people are there. UKIP is there. UKIP is there. I mean, and some members of the Tory party.
I can understand why in France and other countries they're scared about this debate. I think it's one we've got to take on. You know, my father was a refugee, I married a Brazilian, I'm not going to rail against immigration. We want the brightest and the best here. But the idea that Australia or America or other outward-looking countries don't have immigration controls, attract the best and the brightest, but for example, within the EU, take a firmer grip on benefits tourism, or make sure when someone commits a crime here, we can't deport them. Well, look, I think a lot of people would say, well, why can't we be open to those that we want, but also take a slightly stricter line on these other areas?
Any quarrel with that, Emma?
Well, we do need the brightest and the best here. We're in one of the most dynamic, huge cities in the world here in London. But it's certainly true that what we don't want is lots of migrants, economic migrants coming here, putting a downward pressure on wages in some sectors more than others. But it's certainly true that many people that came from Poland, for example, in 2004, 2005, have gone back to Poland because Poland didn't suffer a recession.
And left behind some greatly improved plumbing. But at the same time, would you accept the view that many in Britain feel that there may be too many here?
I think that is probably the case, but I think that we have to make sure that our businesses have access to a workforce. We need to make sure that our workers are better skilled so that they take the jobs that are on offer, not those coming in.
Let me take you on to another thing then, because it really affects both the European Court and the EU, and that is, what would it do to Britain's position in the world if in fact we left? Would we lose our seat on the UN? Would we have the same clout with America, for example, if we weren't members of the European Union?
I think successive American presidents have made it clear that one of the reasons that we have such a close relationship with them is that we are sort of the bridge between the US and Europe. And we stand taller in Washington, and I think we stand taller in China as well, and India, as part of the EU, not outside of it.
Dominic?
Well, look, I don't want to leave the European Union. I'd prefer a renegotiated relationship, but I don't think we have all
Well,
that
hang on a
much...
minute, that's a big thing. David Cameron may come back empty-handed.
Well, and then we'd have to consider all the options. But look...
Well, what do they include?
Well, let's be clear. If we were outside the European Union, we'd have the 6th largest economy in the world, the 4th biggest defence budget. We'd have that seat on the Security Council, an array of diplomatic networks. I worked at the Foreign Office for 6 years. The idea that we would somehow, slump to the bottom of the ocean and not have any clout, any influence, it would actually be a very different kind of outward-looking global relationship
No,
with the world.
Katinka's really shaking her head.
If you want to see how this looks from a global perspective, just go to China or India. From their perspective, there are no big countries and small countries in the European Union. There are only small countries, and Britain is
Well,
one
let
of
me give
them.
you one example. In Libya, Germany actually was against French and British intervention in Libya because they got such a cosy relationship with China and Russia. And I think this idea that there's this burgeoning EU-wide consensus on foreign policy from Iraq to Libya has been shown to be false. Actually, we could stay outside it, chart our own course, take advantage of our own assets perfectly well. I'm not saying it's the ideal, but it's not this sort of Armageddon that would
Well,
strike.
I'm going to have to pause you there, but we have to go back to Krishna now in the studio for a bit more of today's news.